January 27th, 2009. 5 children, an 8-year-old boy, 2 5-year-old girls, 2 2-year-old boys, a wife, and a despondent husband over an employment loss. All murdered, 1 suicide. Yeah, you don't need me now to tell you that this is a serious situation. Randy Kilgore in Marketplace Network newsletter writes, "The rhetoric that always follows these types of days only adds to the trial of real people suffering real anguish." The surprise to me is not that what has happened in the economy has happened. The surprise is that it took so long to happen. A large law firm in Boston held a breakfast seminar, and the gentleman who was the president of the consulting company said, "Who would have thunk it? Who could have predicted this? Who would have predicted this situation? No one." I was sitting really on about the 3rd row, and I so badly wanted to raise my hand because I kept thinking to myself while he's talking, this is all knowable. This is all predictable. Here's the problem, or one problem. The difference between Wall Street and ordinary life really began to widen 20 years ago, 23 years ago to be specific, in the mid-1980s when John Gough, CEO of Salomon Brothers, took the company public amidst outrage by the company's founders, particularly William Salomon, the son of the founder, and others close to the situation, because they understood what it meant. John transferred the ultimate financial risk from the partners to the shareholders. Going from a partnership to a public company transfers risk from the partners who know what's going on to the shareholders who don't know what's going on. In that one decision, John Gough shook up the Wall Street social order, and those on the inside knew what was happening. The psychological foundations of Wall Street were shattered, and they shifted from trust to blind faith. Trust among partners, blind faith among shareholders. They didn't know what is going on. From that moment on, from 1986 till today, Wall Street became a black box. So the surprise is not that the black box is finally unraveled. The surprise is that it took 23 years to do so. Now here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is that few people spoke up. Most people didn't understand it, they didn't try to understand it, and they didn't believe it was a problem. So they didn't understand, so they didn't speak up. Lots of forces have come together, not just in the last few months. The origin of what we've experienced in the last few months goes way back, over the last 20 years, to make really the perfect storm in financial and economic America. That's affected the entire globe. You read the news reports, Iceland, Ireland, Asia, all because of what started here. We're calling it the Great Reckoning. We've exported our economic woes, but even worse, we've exported our ethics. Steve Eisman, some of you may have heard the name, some of you may not. Raised in New York City, University of Pennsylvania undergrad, Harvard Law School grad, corporate lawyer at Oppenheimer. First experience with subprime mortgage lending was in the early 1990s when he was given the task of analyzing a company called Ames Financial. He put a sell rating on it, and he was reprimanded. He said, "This doesn't make sense." The same happened again with another subprime company, Loomis Financial, about which he wrote, quote, "The Loomis Financial Corporation is a perfectly hedged financial institution. It loses money in every conceivable interest rate environment," end quote. And he was reprimanded for that candid opinion. 4 months later, Loomis Financial went bankrupt, and Eisman quit Oppenheimer in 2001. And he went to work for a hedge fund. And he set out to figure out what all this mounting smoke was all about. Let's all figure this thing out. All this nonsense in on Wall Street that was going on at the time, particularly what they sensed was a growing, unhealthy set of circumstances surrounding the U.S. Housing market, because firms were lending money to people who should have never been borrowing it. A bubble was forming, even bigger than the demographic numbers justified. You do the arithmetic, and we're going to show you part of that story tonight. Eisman and his colleagues attended a subprime conference in Las Vegas in late 2006 and heard the CEO of one of the country's largest mortgage originators say in the speech to 2,000 attendees that he was, quote, expecting a modest default rate of 5%. Eisman raised his hand. And it wasn't Q&A time, by the way. It was in the early part of the speech. And the CEO acknowledged him. He saw the hand. He said, question? He said, yes. Would you say the 5% was a probability or a possibility? And the CEO said, oh, probability. Okay. CEO started speaking again. Eisman raised his hand again. Meanwhile, his colleague sitting next to him, knowing what Stephen was like, was getting a little uneasy. So, geez, keep your hand down, Stephen. He raised his hand again. This time, though, instead of doing this, he did this. Waved his hand around again. Visibly annoyed, the CEO said, is that another question out there? And Eisman said, no, it's not. It's a zero. There's a zero probability that your default rate will be 5%. Later, in 2007, Eisman and his colleagues got invited by the CEO of Moody's, because by this time, Stephen and his colleagues' reputation was building on Wall Street as being pretty good and straight shooters, as well as calling it like it is. The CEO of Moody's invited them to his office for a debriefing, at which the CEO announced, at this meeting, quote, I truly believe that our ratings will prove accurate. To which Stephen Eisman laughed, and Vincent Daniels said to the CEO of Moody's, quote, with all due respect, sir, you're delusional. This was Moody's, okay? The aristocrats of the rating business. 20% owned by Warren Buffett. And the CEO is being told by a kid from Queens that either you are stupid or you're a crook.